has never been another aircraft like this. Not before, not after, and probably not ever again. This jet didn't dogfight. It didn't carry bombs. It didn't rely on stealth shaping like modern aircraft, because its defense was much simpler than that. You can't hit what you can't catch. This is the story of the SR-71 Blackbird, the fastest, highest flying, air-breathing aircraft ever put into service. And yes, it really did outrun missiles. To understand why the SR-71 exists at all, you have to go back to the Cold War. At that time, information meant everything. The United States needed to know where enemy missiles were located, which bases were active, and what new technology was being developed. But satellites were unreliable. Drones didn't exist the way they do today, and traditional spy planes were being shot down. So Lockheed's Skunk Works was given a nearly impossible task. Build an aircraft that could fly over enemy territory and come back alive. Not invisible, not armed, just untouchable. That mindset explains why the SR-71 looks so alien. Almost everything about it was experimental. The body was made of titanium, because aluminum would literally melt at its cruising speed. The black paint wasn't just for looks, it helped radiate heat away from the aircraft. The sharp angles reduced radar returns long before stealth aircraft were a thing, and the engines were barely functional at low speed. And here's the detail that always surprises people. The SR-71 leaked fuel on the ground, on purpose. At Mach 3, the aircraft expanded so much that it only sealed once it was hot. Cold on the runway, fuel leaked everywhere. In other words, the plane wasn't truly airtight until it was already flying. Once airborne, that's where the Blackbird became something else entirely. Let's talk numbers, because they're hard to believe. The SR-71 cruised at over Mach 3. It flew above 85,000 feet, faster than bullets, faster than the missiles designed to shoot it down. Pilots didn't say, full throttle, they said, go to Mach. At those speeds, the sky darkened, the horizon curved, and you weren't really flying over Earth anymore. You were skimming at the edge of space. A huge reason the SR-71 could do this was its engines. At low speed, they behaved like normal turbojets, but once the aircraft accelerated, they transformed. At Mach 3, the engines functioned more like ramjets. Most of the thrust came from compressed airflow, not the engine core itself, and massive inlet spikes physically moved in flight to control shock waves. There was no modern fly-by-wire system, no advanced computers making constant corrections. This was mechanical engineering pushed to its absolute limit. Because the SR-71 regularly flew through hostile airspace, missile warnings were common, and the response was always the same. They didn't dive, they didn't turn, they didn't deploy countermeasures. They accelerated. Enemy missiles would burn all their fuel trying to catch up, and fall out of the sky behind them. Blackbird wasn't dodging threats, it was simply leaving them behind. Of course, an aircraft like this required extraordinary crews. Only the best pilots flew the SR-71. There were 2 people on board, the pilot in the front, and the reconnaissance systems officer in the back. They wore full pressure suits, similar to astronauts. If the cockpit lost pressure at altitude, he had only seconds before losing consciousness. Every mission was dangerous, every flight was classified, and every mistake could be fatal. And then, there are the facts that sound completely made up. The fuel had such a high flash point that it wouldn't ignite easily. The engines were started using a V8 race car motor. The aircraft's skin exceeded 500 degrees Fahrenheit in flight, and it carried more classified cameras and weapons. And despite all of this, no SR-71 was ever shot down. Not one. So why retire something so effective? The answer was simple. Cost, maintenance, politics. Each flight was incredibly expensive. Titanium was difficult to source and work with, and satellite technology eventually improved. Still, many pilots argue that nothing has truly replaced it, because speed like that still solves problems. The SR-71 Blackbird wasn't just ahead of its time. It feels like it came from a completely different timeline, built without modern computers, flown entirely by humans, operating right at the edge of physics. Even today, nothing flies faster, nothing flies higher, and nothing has matched its legend. And honestly, we may never see something like it again. So let me ask you, if you could bring one retired aircraft back into service, would it be the Blackbird?